now my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Dan Monska. Is that okay? Dr. Monska is a board-certified ophthalmologist who specializes in diseases of the vitreous and retina. You've heard that before. His area of subspecialty includes medical and surgical management of diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, retinal detachments, and complications of intraocular surgery. He maintains an active interest in the latest research and treatment of retinal disease. Dr. Monska recently served as an investigator for Vision-Eye's photodynamic therapy study. And the other clinical trial I cannot pronounce. Anyway, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Monska.
Thank you. And I'm going to be talking today about, first talk today is about electronic medical records. About 8 years ago, I started a company. I looked at medical records and my own practice and just wasn't happy with what was out there and decided to start a company. And that's what we're going to talk about today, electronic medical records. Essentially what we're talking about is your doctor using a computer versus a piece of paper to document your exam. And the pluses and minuses of that, where the technology is today, where that's going, how that's going to impact care in the future, because it's going to have a tremendous impact on care in the next few years, I believe. First off, EMR stands for Electronic Medical Records. You're going to see that again and again in the talk today. And we're going to talk about why some of the things that at least should be, you would hope, would happen if a doctor converts to a better way to document an exam. Efficiency, how efficiently can he document your exam versus looking at the computer all the time when he could be talking to you. Okay, is the doctor looking at the computer too much versus talking to you? Accessibility. If you call on an evening or on a weekend, can the doctor get to your record quickly? Is he going to know what's going on weekend or evening? Quality of care. What kind of quality care are you getting? Does he know the full record? Does he understand exactly what's going on? How quickly can he get the information about you? Collaboration. Collaboration is something new that we're developing so that doctors can work together to deliver the best care. Doctors across the country don't have to be isolated in terms of how they're taking care of patients. Can we look together to find what particular mechanisms or procedures are doing the best job out there? Can we do that? That's what collaboration is about, and the computer systems can allow us to collaborate online to deliver better care for our patients. Next thing is the government obviously wants to get involved in this too, and they are sort of somewhat holding a gun to the head of doctors to move to electronic systems. So that's another reason that doctors are moving in this direction. First off, I think the most important thing, one of the most important things is efficiency. And obviously if you're seeing a doctor, you don't want them looking at the computer the whole time you're in the exam room with them. You want them to be able to talk to you, to be able to look at you. So to have an efficient medical record, the doctor needs to be able to look at that screen very, very quickly and determine what's going on, where they are in your care. They need to know that you've had a treatment, 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, and why you're back to see them again today. So that's the type of thing we want to be able to deliver very quickly, that he can quickly look at the screen, know what's going on, and then turn to you and let you know what he's going to do at that point. The next thing is obviously the ability to take the information once he does the exam and get it into the computer system quickly, so he's not spending 15 minutes of time clicking away to get the information in there. Initially, there was a lot of reticence, reluctance on the part of doctors to adapt medical records, and that's because these systems were very, very difficult to use. And especially in a retina practice, where typically with retina patients, most patients are relatively older compared to a lot of other specialties. And a lot of the electronic medical records that came out initially were really made for clinics where most of the patients had normal findings. There wasn't a lot of abnormal findings. Unfortunately, as we all get older, we start to develop more abnormal findings: cataracts, glaucoma, pseudophakia, macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy. All these things start to pile up, and now it becomes much more difficult. You end up with these very, very long lists of things that I might have to document. So now the doctor is slowed down, he's searching for the right way to document it, and they may get to a point where he cannot document very accurately what he wants to document because it's so difficult to use a system like this. So really, there's some work that we've done to try to make it more precise, make the medical record more intelligent, so that once you put in a little bit of history about the patient, the system will then allow the doctor to document very quickly with a much shorter pick list with very specific findings on that pick list. So another thing that comes out of this is that, say for instance, a new treatment comes out 6 months from now, and you've seen your doctor 6 months ago, and you told him last time you saw him, Doc, if there's anything new that comes out, I'd like to know about it. If there's something new that might benefit me, I'd like to know about that in the next year or so. And on a paper chart, there's almost no way that I can go back and I can look at a very specific finding and determine if you would benefit from that particular new treatment, okay? Because it's just I'd have to scour through all this paper to try to find out, did you have this particular problem? All the patients, that it would take forever. Can't be done really. So there's no way that with a paper chart that I can look through my records and see who would benefit from the new therapeutic agent for dry macular degeneration or whatever else that would be. In a well-designed computer system, if I click on a particular finding up here in the macula, I'm going to know in an instant all the patients that might benefit from this new treatment coming out. So that is a tremendous advantage of having a computer system in the room, that I can actually go back, a new treatment comes out, I don't have to wait 6 more months go by before my patients know that there's now a new treatment available to them. Some other things. Obviously, I can quickly get summaries of what's gone on with this patient. For instance, I can see it generates very nice summary notes for you, versus on a paper chart, I'd have to do all that by hand, and the summary notes can be generated automatically for me. I can go back and review this information very, very quickly on a computer system. I can also quickly review imaging on a computer system. I can document 10 prior studies, look at them very, very quickly, versus paging through a paper chart can be very difficult, having to page back and forth through a paper chart, not having the images available at any place. And also, a lot of doctors work at more than one office. And a major problem of working at multiple offices is, if you happen to show up at a different office, what happens? They kind of go nuts, because now they've got to fax the records here and there, they don't have your records. This is actually a cloud-based system. Cloud-based means that the information is stored in a data center on the internet, okay? So it's in a secure data center, so no matter what office you would end up at, the doctor could pull your information, your past information. And even going to, for instance, sometimes if I'm at the surgery center to do an operation, I may want to look at the last pictures very quickly. If I don't have the chart with me, then I could pull the pictures at the surgery center, just connect through the internet to see the pictures. Also drawing. A lot of doctors do drawing on paper, and that's something that a lot of people are afraid of when they move to an electronic medical records, that they may not have a hard time drawing at that point. With this system, again, when we talk about efficiency, this system can actually take the things that I click off on the exam part, and it can actually create a drawing based on that. We call it a proposed drawing. So as soon as I click off on my exam, I push a little button, the system actually creates a little drawing for me. I just go back in and I'll tweak it. I'll take my little pencil there, and on the screen, actually have a screen that you actually draw on, right on the screen there, and I can save the drawing that way. So it's an intelligent drawing program. Obviously, if it's a very unique thing, I'm going to hand draw that, but the kind of routine things that I have to draw over and over again, the system can actually make me more efficient, so I'm not spending all the time, again, looking down at the piece of paper doing a drawing. I can get on with that quickly, and we can kind of have a conversation with the patient at that point. Accessibility, we talked about this a little bit. Again, having a cloud-based system, all the data is in a data center. I just have to go through the internet to get to it. I can get there on evenings and weekends, emergency calls up. I've got a little more information than just trying to guess. After asking, what did I see you for? I know I saw you 2 weeks ago, but I don't quite remember why I saw you. I don't have to guess that. I can see actually what I injected, what happened before. I have all that information when you call on that weekend and say I'm having a problem. We did an injection, a week or so ago, and I'm having pain or something. I'll know exactly what's going on because I can access your chart. I can take my cell phone even and have the information on my cell phone to know what's going on with your care. patient access to the record. I mean, we're talking about your ability to get online and see what's going on. Typically, when you want access to the information, what do you have to do? You have to go into the doctor's office, you ask them, can I have a copy of my records? They can fax it for you, whatever. This is something we're working on right now, but it would give you the ability, we could give you a password to get into your account, and you could actually look on your own account online to see what's going on. Maybe you want to share that with you've got a son or a daughter that wants to know what's going on with your care. You don't have to want to copy all those records. You could give them access to your account and let them know exactly what's going on with your care. Quality of care. Obviously, we're all concerned about quality of care. And I think one of the ways that having the records on a computer can really enhance the doctor's ability to give you quality care is things like this. I have a little section in the chart I call my treatment notes. And those are the little things I want to remind myself of every single time before I pull out the needle or I talk to you about surgery or anything like that. Things like, okay, the patient's on Coumadin. I don't want to forget that. I want to know that if they've had, before I start them on, so for instance, a steroid injection or something like that, I want to know they've had a steroid injection in the past. Alert allergies, specific allergies, because I use a lot of betadine, so that's something I really want to remind myself of. Or maybe you're not around the whole year, and I want to start thinking about that come April, that you're going to head up north to New York, and there's going to be a doctor up there that's going to be taking over your care at that point. So this really allows me to track those things, little things that I used to kind of forget about that maybe didn't get carried forward. I was relying on my technician to bring that stuff forward into the new exam. They were in a hurry or something, they forgot to copy something forward, and then you're kind of caught, and you realize you hadn't thought that through before you were talking about a particular treatment plan. So those little things I think can really enhance the quality of care. Next thing, this is a slide. This slide basically is one of the things that really kind of excites me about electronic medical records today. We all heard about Facebook and how now Facebook's kind of revolutionized social networking. So instead of having to use email to talk to your friends, you now have ways that you go online and you can share pictures and people can talk together and you can have groups, associations online. Well, cloud-based EMR electronic medical records has that same ability for doctors to benefit by doctors that do the same type of thing online. Right now we've got a tremendous number of retina doctors that use our system, and now they're able to go online, and I can see on the right-hand column that says that's what's in use in my system right now. So that's how I'm documenting this particular procedure here, is using these ways of doing it. That's how I document, when I document a procedure. I can also look on the right-hand column, I'm going to say the left-hand column here, and I can see how other doctors around the country are doing it. So if some doctor has a really good idea, we all can benefit from that. So it's like we're all kind of a large group that can benefit from each other's best of ideas, so to speak. And also if you think about clinical trials, that type of thing, this is a really unique way to look at that, where doctors could work together looking at a new type of therapy and the results, how you break down, how you classify a patient with macular degeneration, for instance. When you do your examination of the macula, what are the really critical things that I should be looking at when I'm examining the macula? So again, those types of things can all be shared in this type of a knowledge base. There are other things out there that doctors use to document. Some of them is like ICD-9. You may have heard of ICD-9. That's kind of the government's knowledge base that they use for documenting certain things. That gives me 3 choices for macular degeneration: dry, wet, and unspecified. Not a lot of information there, okay? If you're going to talk to Dr. Tolentino, he could probably break down dry A and D into 15 different categories that are actually useful. So, if you're on the high end of pathology, you're going to want a much better way of breaking it down than basically what I call the authoritarian knowledge bases can do for you. So, the people that are really on the edge, leading edge of this on research and things like that, are looking at much more detailed ways to break it down. And again, when a new study comes out, how am I going to know which patients in my practice could benefit from that new study? How am I ever going to know that? If I've got a system like this and I've documented in some level of detail exactly what your problem is, I can go through and I can search 10,000 files and I can find the 15 patients I can find a needle in a haystack as to the patients I think that are going to make benefit from this new treatment coming out. So I think that's something that's new and I think really exciting. The last reason, and I think one of the worst reasons that people are having to move to EMR is they're having to comply with government regulations, and it's kind of being dragged into it. I think really, in general, probably the doctors should be able to make those decisions themselves, in general. We can also talk about, what is the downside? Downside almost looks somewhat like the upside in some ways, because there are just some systems, electronic systems, that maybe are not that well designed. Maybe the doctor's clinic is not really ready for it. Maybe they didn't get trained on it. So, in other words, if the doctor doesn't know, it's like a brand new piece of equipment or a brand new car or something. If you don't learn the intricacies of how to use it, it can actually slow you down. It can actually be a negative impact on a clinic. And again, I think we've seen that again and again with a lot of the systems on the market right now, that doctors have really become very shy of electronic medical records because they've actually slowed them down. So again, what we're trying to do to get away from that is to build in some intelligence into these systems so that they really are a benefit, not something that's slowing the doctor down. The other thing is a lack of specificity, okay? When I say specificity, I mean you should be able to document in some level of detail what's going on with the patient. You saw that big, massive pick list that I showed you earlier, all the different little ways to describe something. If the list is not intelligent, if there's no intelligence built into that list, the doctor's going to ignore that list, and he's going to just pick something off the top of the list. And that thing that he picks off the top of the list may not really be an accurate description of what the patient actually had. Okay, and the shame is that now I can't go back, and when a new study does come out, I'm not able to go back into my records with any valuable information unless I have some specificity in there. I say the other thing is kind of the preoccupation with the computer during the exam. And again, I'm sure if you're a patient, if I'm a patient, I don't want my doctor just being occupied with the patient, the computer. I mean, really, what we look at is how can we eliminate clicks? How many seconds does the doctor have to look at the computer or have to click at the computer before he can turn back to the patient? That was kind of always one of the main features that I said I wanted the programmers to monitor. That's how the system gets better. When I can look at the computer screen for just a couple of seconds, know exactly what's going on with that patient, and then when I have to turn back to the patient, do the exam, turn back to the computer screen, how quickly can I get that information that I've learned from looking at the patient back into the computer system. So that is really a very, very important part of it. Also, there is an expense to adopt these things, and an expense. Doctors have to buy the hardware, they have to get trained on it, those types of things. I mean, hopefully in the end, the doctors do see it as a benefit to their patients in the long run, so they're willing to make that investment. And again, we've moved to what we call a cloud-based model, where the doctor can just connect to the internet, and it's less expensive for them to set it up and get it going. They don't have to purchase a lot of hardware for their own office before they get started on the system. The other thing is that there's somewhat of a learning curve, and obviously while the doctor's learning the system, it is going to be more difficult for him. It may slow him down for a few weeks or a certain amount of time, but we really want to try to limit the amount of time that they are slowed down and their clinics are delayed in that way. Just in summary here, we get to any questions in a minute here. I think you're going to see doctors using electronic medical records much more in the next 3 to 4 years. And like I said, I mean, the government's kind of twisting the arms of doctors now to get into these systems. Hopefully the systems will continue to get better so that we don't see some of the problems that we've seen in the past with EMRs. Again, they can have multiple benefits to doctors. I think one of the biggest benefits is the collaboration that's going on right now with certain systems that are cloud-based. And I think you're going to see more and more of that in the future, because there's such a tremendous value in terms of studies that can be done as you add sort of a user community with doctors working together that can share information. I also believe that really the decision, I wouldn't push your doctor if your doctor's not ready to do this. It should be his decision as to when they make the move to electronic medical records. You don't want them to get into a system where they're actually going to lower the level of care. Wait till the doctor's ready to do it, and let them make that decision as to what the best time is. It may not be the right time for them. They need to be able to make that decision. Any questions? Yes.
Just last week, my therapist put me to can you read it? I said, only God can, God can even read it. So why can't they use a computer to provide that prescriptions?
That is happening. That's going to be changing. That's one of those things. One of the reasons that it's gradually changing. But again, that's been one of the that's one of the downsides of paper. So we got downsides on both sides. That's one of the downsides of paper. You can't read. Sometimes some people say about the downside of the computer can be that there's too much information that doesn't have any real value. So, but again, that's the downside of paper. You can't. Sometimes you can't read doctor's writing, which we are notorious for. Well, not to learn how to write, and we've gotten that years ago. Question? Do you have a question? Hopefully in the future. Right now, that takes, one of the other things that you need to understand about this type of thing, these systems have to become integrated. Okay, so there's an integration that has to go on between our system and the hospital system. They have to be able to talk back and forth. So that's more difficult than you might think. Okay, it's more difficult than you might think. But obviously, that's a very inefficient thing to send you over. There certainly is a way that could be done. Unfortunately, it's just, when it comes to doing things like that, it's never a simple thing because there's like 500 people that have to get involved with that decision and how that information gets transmitted and things like that. So it's going to happen that type of thing where the hospital records will be available to your doctor, that type of thing. But now you're talking about different systems being able to talk to each other. Yes. That's always a concern. You better believe that's a concern, is hackers and that type of thing. For instance, in our system, we do use it's called HTTPS, where it's an encrypted signal that goes from the computer to the data center. So it uses standard banking level security on that message. And we do have people what we call intrusion detection, intrusion prevention of people trying to hack into the system. Now, hopefully, we're not a major target. We don't consider ourselves one of the major targets, but certainly could happen. And you see data breaches all the time. Data breaches happen. Usually, they're trying to get into Social Security numbers, financial information, that type of thing. And fortunately, we don't store much of that. It's really that's more stored on the practice management side of things versus the clinical side of things. So hopefully, we're not. But that is absolutely a concern. And it's a concern for any doctor's office. Any doctor that's storing records, even in his own office, if they have a connection out to the internet, they are potential for getting hacked, okay? So it's not just cloud-based systems that can get hacked. A doctor's office can get hacked into also because typically, I think probably 98% of doctor's offices do have internet connections connected to their servers. And then potentially you have firewalls and things like that to prevent that from ever occurring, but those things can occur. Yes.
How do you prevent somebody from modifying a record after you create it?
Yes, that is a concern also, and it's also a concern with paper. It's a concern with paper also. What these systems do, what our system does, for instance, it never really deletes anything. So if I go back into that record and I make a change in a field, for instance, there is an audit trail that it creates. It's essentially me crossing the line out through an entry, dating it, signing it, and making the change. That's what's in. All that information as to who made the change, when they made it, and what the change exactly was is part of an audit record. So, we try not to make those things too oppressive that the doctor can't get his work done, but that has to be the case. And I will go back and make a change in the electronic record. I will go back. If for some reason we said they were blurred vision in the right eye when it's really blurred vision in the left eye, and I catch that, you don't want to not change that because that will lead to propagation of error. It'll lead to you making another bad decision down the road because you didn't correct it. But it does create an audit log of all the changes you make, and that's obviously a concern. Yes.
How do you integrate the past into the record?
Yeah, so if your, say for instance, your doctor gets a new EMR, what's he going to do? What's he going to do with all that? You've got a big thick paper chart now, what's he going to do with your paper chart? Typically what the doctor's going to do, he's going to take, to be very honest with you, you may have a 3-inch paper chart, but what the doctor really needs is about 5% of that. That's what the information he really needs going forward is about 5% of what's in that big fat paper chart. So we have a way, when a doctor comes onto an electronic medical record system, to do a conversion process. Basically, they scour the really critical information out of that paper chart into the electronic system. Now, for the first couple times that you come in, the doctor may still have the paper chart sitting right here, the electronic record sitting right here. So that would be common, that he'd still continue to use that paper chart for the first couple times until he's convinced he's got all the information in the computer system. Yeah?
Actually, comes up another thing. As your system ages, how about unimportant things that have gone into the system 3 years ago or 5 years ago or such? Get that out of the way so that it's there, but it's not so obtrusive as.
Right. You know, as you add more and more data, obviously any system's going to start to slow down, and you know, we do look at that. I mean, some of that's from a regulatory standpoint, how much of that information you need to have kind of instant access to. So it can be archived, so it's not that it doesn't tie the system too much. Right now, as you know, if you follow computers, which I'm sure a lot of you have, every year hard drives get less and less expensive. So you can buy your terabyte hard drive now for $90 at Best Buy. So again, we're seeing the same thing, so that storage requirements become less and less expensive, but still there is a need at some point to be able to archive information, possibly make it you know, less, not quite as accessible, but still there.